MVP. Ain't no name on it. Nigga, get the ball played and get the action. Let's go. Why you got it? Change time.
He asked Chris Paul if he changed up the defensive assignment yesterday. And Chris said, no, I didn't change up the assignment. I just suggested, hey, we might want to have somebody else guarding Clay right now because Kawhi is not warm yet.
A future Hall of Famer was sent packing in the middle of the night, and at 2:40 a.m., Chris Paul jumped on Instagram letting everyone know he just found out he was being sent home. No warning, no long meeting, just a sudden exit that had the whole league side-eyeing the situation. Almost instantly, the media flipped the script and turned him into the bad guy. They labeled him difficult, a so-called locker room lawyer, and painted him as someone too disruptive for the Clippers to deal with. But here's the part nobody wanted to touch. Actual video footage surfaced, and it told a completely different story. Once you see what Chris Paul was really calling out, it becomes obvious why the Clippers felt uncomfortable. He wasn't the problem at all, and that truth made people inside that building nervous. Let's slow it down and look at what really went down. The official version sounded clean and simple. The Clippers were off to a rough start, losses piling up, vibes bad. And Chris Paul, being Chris Paul, started doing what vets do, holding people accountable. He questioned rotations, pushed back on coaching calls, challenged the front office, and spoke up about effort on the floor. Nothing wild, nothing crazy, just leadership. But apparently, that was too much for the organization to handle. That's when Lawrence Frank entered the picture. He personally flew to Atlanta to deliver the news face to face. In his statement, Frank claimed the team was moving on while making it clear no one was blaming Chris Paul for the struggles. Veteran clashes with management happen all the time in the NBA, so on the surface it looked like business as usual, except there's a massive hole in that story, because when you actually watch the game film, when you really see what Chris Paul was reacting to, something uncomfortable starts popping up. The Clippers didn't move on because he was disruptive. They moved on because he was calling out something they didn't want exposed. And that something involved their highest paid player, which made the situation way more sensitive. Now let's talk about the footage that flipped everything upside down. It happened during a game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Clippers were down 13 points in the fourth quarter, season slipping, energy low, and Donovan Mitchell was straight torching them every trip down the floor. And that's when things took a turn. Chris Paul, a 40-year-old guard, miles on his body, career near the end, decided he was taking the challenge himself. He locked in and went straight at Mitchell. Think about that for a second. This is a player everyone says is too slow now, past his prime, legs gone. Yet there he was, fighting through screens, staying attached, giving maximum effort to drag his team back into the fight. Meanwhile, on the other end of the floor, Kawhi Leonard was moving very differently, and that contrast didn't go unnoticed. After the Clippers scored, Cleveland ran a classic veteran stall move. Darius Garland let the ball roll up the court instead of picking it up right away. When the ball rolls like that, the game clock keeps ticking, but the shot clock doesn't start until someone touches it. Smart move when you've got the lead. Chris Paul spotted it instantly, no hesitation. He started yelling, pointing, and barking at his teammates to step up and pressure the ball. He saw time bleeding off the clock and refused to let it slide. That moment right there says everything. Awareness, effort, leadership, and that's exactly the kind of thing that made certain people uncomfortable. But Kawhi Leonard just jogged back like nothing was urgent, no rush, no awareness, no pressure. Darius Garland rolled the ball all the way into the front court untouched, and by the time anyone reacted, 16 full seconds were gone for free. Garland attacked, kicked it out, and Cleveland splashed a three to stretch the lead even more. From start to finish, the Cavs burned over 30 seconds and got a bucket, all because the Clippers didn't hustle back, and it somehow got worse. On the very next possession, the Clippers scored again, and Kawhi went right back to that slow, casual jog like this was a walkthrough instead of a must-win game. Garland saw it and did the same thing again. Why wouldn't he? Nobody was stopping him anyway. This is the moment that says everything about that locker room. While most of the Clippers drifted back at half speed, Chris Paul sprinted the entire length of the court to stop the time wasting himself. When the camera pulled back, Kawhi wasn't even in the frame. A 40-year-old point guard showed more urgency than a two-time finals MVP making over $50 million a year. That contrast speaks loud. After a dead ball, Chris Paul finally walked up to Kawhi and told him straight up that he needed to get up because Cleveland was bleeding the clock dry. The next possession, Kawhi finally pressured the ball, which brings up the real question. If Chris Paul hadn't said anything, would Kawhi have kept jogging the rest of the game? And would anyone else on that roster have had the nerve to call it out? Based on everything we've seen, probably not. And that right there is the real issue with the Clippers. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, Kawhi Leonard's defense. Yes, he's got 2 Defensive Player of the Year awards from his Spurs days. Back then, he guarded everyone, LeBron, Durant, whoever. But reputations last way longer than performance. Once you get labeled elite, people assume you're that guy forever. Reality says otherwise. Kawhi hasn't made an all-defensive team since 2021, and last season his defensive rating was the worst of his career. Watch the games, not the box score. The effort's been slipping for years. He's become offense first, coasting on defense. Still an elite scorer, no debate, but the dominant two-way force talk doesn't hold up anymore. And when Chris Paul called that out and held the supposed leader accountable, the organization flipped on him. Silencing the messenger was easier than fixing the problem, and what really sped up his exit came after a direct clash with the coaching staff during a loss to the Dallas Mavericks. Kawhi Leonard was clearly struggling on defense after checking back into the game following a rest stretch. He looked stiff, not warmed up, and couldn't stay in front of Klay Thompson at all. The matchup was going sideways fast. During a fourth quarter timeout, Chris Paul walked over and asked Kawhi a simple, direct question. Did he feel fresh enough, and could he stay with Klay right now? Kawhi admitted he was having trouble, so Paul did what smart veterans do. He suggested switching the defensive assignment until Kawhi got his legs back. It was a common sense adjustment, the kind that helps teams survive close games. The Clippers made the switch, and that's when things went left. The very next day, Chris Paul was called into a meeting with assistant coach Jeff Van Gundy during the team flight. Van Gundy asked him point blank if he changed the defensive coverage during the game. Paul explained he didn't officially change anything, he only suggested someone else guard Klay temporarily. Van Gundy's response was ice cold. He told Paul that while he may have had freedom to make those calls elsewhere, he didn't have that leeway in Los Angeles. Think about that. A 12-time All-Star, over 20 years in the league, one of the smartest basketball minds in the building, being told he couldn't even suggest a fix while the team was losing. Shortly after, Chris Paul posted a cryptic message online. Just a screenshot of the dictionary definition of the word leeway. No caption, no explanation. Now we know exactly what that was about. Things got even messier after Paul was sent home. James Harden and Kawhi Leonard went to the media acting shocked, saying they had no idea this was coming. But multiple reports say that wasn't true at all. Behind the scenes, both stars were reportedly fed up with Paul's constant accountability and had already signed off on the move. Once he was gone, the 2 highest paid players watched a teammate get pushed out for calling out effort, and instead of backing him, they let it happen. Leonard initially respected Paul's feedback, but over time started seeing it as nagging instead of leadership. Harden, meanwhile, already knew from their Houston days that Paul could be tough to deal with, and those concerns came back fast. Step back and look at the bigger picture. This wasn't about one argument or one game. This was a locker room where comfort mattered more than accountability, and the organization backed that choice completely. When Paul was sent home, the Clippers were 6-18, had lost 8 of their last 10, ranked 25th in defense and 19th in offense. By every measure, the team was failing, and the one guy willing to demand more was the one they removed. Nobody else on that roster was ever going to hold Kawhi Leonard accountable. Everyone else is chasing their next contract, trying to stay in the league, trying not to get labeled as difficult. Rocking the boat gets you shipped out fast, and players know that. Chris Paul was different. His career is winding down. He doesn't need another deal, and he doesn't need to stay on anyone's good side. That gave him the freedom to actually tell the truth. And that kind of honesty is dangerous to an organization that would rather lose comfortably than win through accountability. Now look where the Clippers are stuck. Over $50 million owed to Kawhi Leonard next season, and James Harden holding a $42 million player option he's almost guaranteed to take. They owe draft picks to Oklahoma City, so rebuilding isn't even an option. No flexibility, no clear direction, and no answers. The veterans around their stars haven't delivered. Defensive problems are still there, and the one voice pushing for effort and urgency got silenced. Steve Ballmer poured billions into this franchise. New arena, massive investment, championship expectations. Yet the culture feels like one where nobody can speak truth to power. Add injuries, chemistry issues, ongoing questions around Kawhi, and a fan base running out of patience. And every loss shrinks the window even more. Chris Paul's legacy will always spark debate. He's one of the greatest point guards ever, and yes, he's also known for being hard to play with. Both things can be true at the same time, but what nobody can deny is the footage. When the clip surfaced showing exactly what Chris Paul was calling out, the evidence was right there. He wasn't exaggerating, he wasn't being unreasonable, he was pointing out real effort problems from players who should absolutely know better. Sometimes the difficult person isn't difficult at all, they're just the only one willing to say what everyone else is thinking but won't say out loud. Chris Paul walked out with receipts, and now the whole world sees what he saw. The real question is whether the Clippers will ever address it, and based on everything we've seen, that would require uncomfortable conversations with the highest paid players, something this organization clearly doesn't want to do. They'll keep losing, keep making excuses, and keep wondering why nothing changes. Meanwhile, a 40-year-old point guard showed more hunger than guys making 10 times his salary, and honestly, that tells you everything about what's really broken in Los Angeles. If you want more breakdowns like this, make sure to like the video, share it with a friend, and subscribe, because the truth always comes out sooner or later.